Welcome back everyone to a new video on the channel. I've created a new kind of e-power. What you're looking at is, well, think of it like a dumb e-power. It doesn't have any kind of logic on it, unlike normal e-powers, like one of these right here, for example. By the way, I'll be making a dedicated video about these. Haven't so far, because the only GPU that I had, or actually I think the only GPU in the world right now that has been e-powered with one of these, yeah, I gave it to Soyo. But yeah, this thing right here, it's a dumb e-power. It doesn't have any kind of logic on it that drives the VRM itself. And the only thing this does is replace the MOSFETs and inductors of an existing VRM. In this instance, this e-power right here is purpose-made for one of these. It's a Gigabyte H55M UD2H, and the VRM on it, the V-Core VRM, it's a 4-phase, fine for the dual cores, even on LN2, but the quad cores, yeah, not exactly great. You can run them. As far as I'm concerned, it's actually possible to do that, but you're kind of at least approaching the limits of what this VRM can do, and you're risking potential damage. So that's why I created this right here, the ePower B4 UD2H, as you can see. B4, by the way, because it is based on the improved version of this, so this is B3. The improved version of this is B4, and this right here is based on that, or at least parts of it are. This approach to e-powering motherboards by only replacing the MOSFETs and the inductors, really. That said, there's also, obviously, there's capacitors on here too for the output filter and input filter. So it is an upgrade in that regard too, but the primary aim for this thing is to replace the MOSFETs and the inductors to increase the current that the VRM can push without replacing the control circuitry for this thing. The reason that's kind of important here, not replacing the control circuitry, is because, yeah, these boards, they don't like it to be e-powered with a more standard e-power like this that is basically all in one package, has a controller on it and whatever. Yeah, they don't like it. So I decided, how about I just design a PCB that only replaces the MOSFETs and the inductors and keeps everything in place, because that's going to make the board work, at least in theory, or it will make the board accept a new upgraded VRM without any kind of trouble. And the other benefit is BIOS voltage control remains functional, so you do not have to set the voltage on the core VRM on these boards. Once e-powered through some kind of potentiometer or whatever, you can just go into the BIOS, punch in 1.8 volts, and in theory, provided, right, I haven't actually tested it yet, which is why I'm caveating things here, but in theory, it should just work, right? You should just, the board should be none the wiser whether it's running this 4-phase or this. So, yeah, BIOS voltage control remains functional, so you should just be able to go in there, punch in 1.8 volts, and you get 1.8 volts out of this thing right here. Another thing, certain AMD GPUs, and for sure Intel GPUs, don't like to be e-powered as well. And I tried to e-power this one here, just like one of these, and it didn't work, or at least not reliably. So for the GPU, it didn't work at all. And for this one, it didn't work reliably. So I did actually get it to post, but it didn't always post. But for these GPUs right here, which I know for sure don't work, this kind of e-power would make it possible to upgrade the VRM on them. You wouldn't really be able to increase the phase count, that kind of stuff. That said, the approach that I've taken here to kind of address that is to just make each individual phase beefy. Right? If you look at the inductors on here, these are huge, and that's because these are 1 microhenry 54 amp inductors. This board doesn't have MOSFETs and power connectors and all the capacitors on it yet, but this board is already pretty heavy just because of the inductors. But this kind of approach to an e-power should make it possible to e-power ARC GPUs, other motherboards, AMD GPUs as well. There's some where, similar to the ARC GPUs, if you attempt to e-power them, they will not work anymore because, well, on AMD GPUs, it's known that the driver of the GPU talks to the controller, and obviously if the controller isn't there, or if the controller has entered some kind of a fault condition, it won't work anymore. or the GPU driver will just get a response from the controller, hey look, something's wrong, shut down. But with this kind of approach, just replacing the MOSFETs and the inductors, yeah, the GPU or motherboard should be none the wiser as to something like this being present. Obviously, the disadvantage with this kind of approach, though, is that one of these right here is really only going to be usable with the board that it is made for, right? In this instance, the UD2H, unless you do some kind of modification to this. Other VRMs, the way they're laid out, whatever, the Sonabra circuits, if they use different packages for the components, if they have some additional circuitry on the MOSFET gates and that kind of stuff, yeah, it's this, you can modify it certainly to make it work with other stuff as well, but the way it comes, it would really only be usable with the thing it is made for. So that's kind of the limitation of these. These are not like general purpose e-powers. These are specifically designed and made for a specific GPU motherboard. That said, I plan to make more of these because, yeah, it doesn't take long to make these. As a matter of fact, I think I got this one done maybe in 2 days, and it was only actually 2 days because I didn't work on it for an entire day. So, and especially now that I have a finished one, I can just take this, the design for this, adapt it to whatever else I want to make one of these kinds of e-powers for, and it's going to be a matter of like maybe a couple of hours. But yeah, so this kind of e-power, quite excited for this. I think this has potential for making previously impossible e-powers possible. That's going to be it for this one. Just a really short video about these. I'm sending a couple of these to Soyo. He said that he wanted to do some things with it, wanted to do some testing with it. So stay tuned for that, I guess. And definitely go ahead and check his channel out if you haven't done so already. And yeah, with that said, hope to see you guys again in the very next video. Have a good one.